Well, in the meantime, while our thoughts and prayers are there, we are learning some new information about former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort, which could influence his testimony in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee set for next week on Russia's attempted meddling in the 2016 election. The New York Times reporting that Paul Manafort was in debt to pro-Russian interest by as much as $17 million before joining the Trump campaign back in March of 2016. So let's bring in our legal panel. Yodit Tewolde is a former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney, and also with us is Doug Burns, a criminal defense attorney and former federal prosecutor. Thank you both for joining us.
My pleasure.
So according to Politico, we have a date of July 26 where Paul Manafort, Jared Kushner, and Donald Trump Jr. are set to testify before the Senate. I believe that Donald Trump Jr. and Paul Manafort, their teams, have not answered that call to testify yet. They're still mulling it over. But Yodit, I'll start with you. Let's begin with Paul Manafort and the latest information that we've received in reference to this huge debt.
You know what? Doing business with Russia isn't illegal, but when that business then influences policy, then you're likely to have violations. So with the investigation now looking into Manafort's tax and business records to see if there have been any criminal violations, that opens the door up to now possibly looking at the president's tax and business records, which we know to this day the president refuses to hand over. And so it's going to be very interesting to see as this investigation continues what they uncover. But I wouldn't be surprised, especially since now you have the president throwing his consistent and most loyal supporter, Jeff Sessions, under the bus. I wouldn't be surprised if he now fires Mueller, if he now starts to look around into Trump's finances.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about whether or not he should do that. But, Doug, before I get to you, and I do want you to respond to this as well, we do have a statement, and this came from Paul Manafort's spokesperson, Jason Maloney. He says, quote, Manafort is not indebted to Mr. Deripaska, that is one of the entities involved in this, or the Party of Regions, nor was he at the time he began working for the Trump campaign. The broader point, which Mr. Manafort has maintained from the beginning, is that he did not collude with the Russian government to influence the 2016 election. So that, to them, is the bottom line.
Look, yeah, that's right. I mean, but as Yodit says, these are complicated facts. They have to be worked through. There could very well be financial entanglements and deals and transactions that are going to be studied and looked at. The other point is that the president appears to be quite upset over the possible expansion of the scope of the independent counsel's, probe. We've been down that road many times in the past in other contexts. So it's a pretty significant development, but certainly not one that lends itself, to one-liners or sound bites or conclusions.
And what did you think about the statements that he had made today in the New York Times interview?
Well, I thought that it was highly notable, obviously, to make a statement, about the sitting attorney general. I don't think it was necessarily all that good of an idea to be saying that, I wouldn't have hired him had he indicated that he was going to recuse himself. But again, I wouldn't read, too much into it, but I didn't think it was a particularly wise move necessarily.
And Yodit, specifically involving Donald Trump Jr., you're saying that he could face some legal issues for violating the campaign finance laws?
So we know that this word collusion has been put out there a number of times, and although the statute, it's hard to prove up collusion, that includes campaign finance law violations. And so when you have a meeting that all three actually attended in hopes to get opposition research to use against Hillary Clinton at the time, then you can look into possible violations of campaign finance laws when you aren't supposed to receive any contributions, anything of value from a foreign national. So if you look at the information that they were hoping to get as value, then you have a possible case against Trump Jr. for campaign finance laws. So again, it just is going to depend. It's going to be really interesting to see next week. Hopefully they do attend voluntarily to go and testify and see what they say and what they admit to and what the Senate can actually get information from
And
from
Doug,
them. So
finally,
we're
very
all gonna have to see.
quickly, Doug, we have to wrap up. But
Yeah.
how risky is this hearing for President Trump next week?
I don't think it is, because I respectfully disagree, just in the sense that I'm not sure that it's clear legally that information is a thing of value. That's a complicated question. It could be, but I don't think, I think it's going to be high political drama, but I'm not so sure legally it has nearly the significance that it does politically.
Okay, Yodit and Doug, thank you so much for joining us.
My
Busy
pleasure.
day, a lot of breaking news. Thanks.
Sure.